All right, YouTube, this is going to be my contribution to YouTube. Thanks to all those who do the Who's You What You projects and help me do my projects. So one thing that I've had a hard time with on YouTube is finding rear axle projects on Toyota Tacomas. So I have a 2005 Toyota Tacoma 4x4, and I had an ABS light that came on. When it didn't affect anything. I didn't have oil leaking into my brake drums, or there wasn't anything that was obvious that my axle seal had failed, except when I had this all still, when I had the truck still all put together, I took a camera. It's one of those scope cameras that you can get for Harbor Freight for, I don't know, 140 bucks or whatever. And I took the ABS sensor out, and I looked inside, and all I could see was this black, greasy, nasty looking goo. And I took some still photos, and so I'll see if I can attach those in with this video. But it just looked really nasty. And so this is the passenger side I'm working on right now. And when I looked at the driver's side over there, I mean, it was just crystal, you saw a nice clean axle when you looked inside that hole. So obviously the code that I was getting for my ABS sensor fault was legitimate. Now I've pulled this out and I haven't touched anything, and look what I see. So here's my ABS sensor, and then the ABS sensor probe just barely pokes in here, and it detects, the magnetic changes that go along as this rotates around. But look what's sitting right here. This big old nasty gob of grease or something. Whatever it is, it's dirty. Something is failed here. Now when I actually push around in here, I think the bearing has actually come apart. Even though, so my bearing actually isn't making any noise. Things actually still sound really, kind of smooth. But look, I'm able to pull this plate out. And on the replacement part, you can see my bearings down in there. On the replacement part that I have, you can't pull the bearing ring apart like that. You can't pull the bearing apart. So what I ultimately decided to do is I'm actually even though I didn't have any grinding or any issues that way, I have decided I'm just going to replace this entire assembly. And I'm not going to go through that in this video, but I just wanted to show you this is why I was getting an ABS. So let me actually just clear it out for you. So now you can see how the ABS sensor just kind of pokes in there. With that gob of grease sitting there, that's why it was getting an error. So my project today is I'm going to swap out this entire bearing assembly, and while I have everything off, I'm going to replace this axle seal, and then I'm also going to replace the O-ring that goes between these two plates here, between the actual bearing hub assembly and the axle housing. So hope that helps a little bit. This is why I got an ABS code. This is why I've pulled the bearing apart today. There's a ton of videos available out there that will go through how to pull this apart, and so I'm not going to go through that. I do thank the other YouTube community for helping me with that. I hope this video helps you a little bit at least. That's why I got my ABS light. And then just to compare, so this is actually going to be the replacement part. So you'll see that in here, a lot of people will just press the bearing out and then press a new one in out of the old part. I've just decided that I'm just going to get a whole new hub and bearing that's already pre-installed. So this is going to go just like, and these are These actually are different per side. So these aren't, you can't just put this one on the right or passenger side because the holes for the ABS sensor are going to be set up specific for whichever side you're working. So I'm going to be pressing this out of the brake plate. And the way I do that is I'm actually going to take a hammer and I'm going to hammer these out. These are just, these are like, and you can critique me, I don't know the technical name for them, but they're basically wedged in there. They have, they aren't threads all the way down. They're like, it's like a press bolt almost, where once I hit this out, and it'll fall out the bottom of the brake plate here, and then once I get all 4 bolts out, I can actually just pull this piece out. But first, I'm going to use my 20-ton press to push the axle. I got to get this bearing retaining ring off, so I'm going to use my 20-ton press to do that. And then once I get this retaining ring apart, I'm gonna pull this off, and then this is just garbage, so I'm just gonna replace it with this replacement. Aside from that, if you want me to flip the axle around, I can do that for you, just so you can kind of see what's on the other side. So this is the other side of the brake plate, right? So right in here these are those bolts that I was telling you about. This is just got a round button head on it, and when I whack that through, I'll just be able to just pull this entire assembly out. You can already see it's kind of rusted and whatnot. I feel better just replacing the whole hub housing instead of just pressing in a new bearing. So anyways, this is my second part. I thought that this was my first part that I did was going to be the only thing I showed you, but I may come up with some other things that are useful for you to know. And if I do, I might extend this video even further, but for now, over and out. I do want to show you while I'm working on this axle seal, see how there's a whole bunch of like rust and whatnot, gunk that's kind of, so there's actually an O-ring. So this O-ring actually goes around right here, right? So before I put that O-ring on, I'm actually taking a little bit of fine grit sandpaper, and I'm just kind of sanding off so that O-ring kind of has a nice clean surface to seal against. And then once I get all that done, because I want to avoid getting sand particulates and whatnot inside the seal itself, or kind of in here. I don't want to mess with that, so I'm doing this first before I actually set the seal in. All right, and by the way, the part number 4, my 2005 Tacoma 4x4 double cab. I mean, none of that makes any difference, but it's a 2005 Tacoma. I think that this rear end is the exact same like on the FJ Cruiser and probably even some other Toyota models, but in any case, in my particular case, it's Napa part number 22822. And then I'll actually pull this out of the box so that you can see it real quick. So I like this seal. It's got kind of a green, greenish membrane around the exterior of it. It's metal, but it's got a greenish exterior to seal the inside as well as the outside. So the other thing I want to make a note of is when I was taking this retaining ring off, I misshaped it a little bit. Now, this looks pretty square. This looks pretty circular, and I think I'm okay to put it on. In fact, I was kind of using a roll of electrical tape to kind of gauge like how much I screwed it up. But I've kind of been able to bend it back into place. But just FYI, I did go down to, I went to O'Reilly's, I went to AutoZone, I went to Napa. They do not carry these bearing retaining ring clips. This is an OEM part. I think I'd have to go to a Toyota dealership. So I feel confident that I was able to bend this back to where, it's okay. And the way I got it off is, sorry, I'm holding my phone with one hand, but the way I got it off is as if this retaining ring was on here. I took the screwdriver. I first used an awl, okay, and then I tapped it in, and when I tapped it in with a hammer, that's actually what started to bend out the retaining ring. But once I did that, I was able to kind of just get my flathead screwdriver in there, and as I just tapped it gently, I was able to tap it on about an angle like this, and it actually just kind of popped it out of its place. And then I just kind of tapped it all the way around the circle, and then it eventually just kind of popped off. But I did misshape it a little bit, so just be aware of that. There's probably we're in the age right now of COVID-19, and when I'm going to auto parts stores and Harbor Freight and stuff, they actually don't have their big, a lot of their supply is gone. So I wasn't able to get a Meteor snap ring. Like these are for just little tiny guys, right? You need a bigger onion to deal with this type of this size and thickness of ring. So anyways, that's all on that. Just a little bit about getting the bearing ring retaining clip off. If I were you, and maybe by the time I put this Mod Podge of little video clips together, I will have a part number and an estimated cost for you. It's probably better that you just order this and have it ready to go with everything else, and that way you won't have to be as careful taking it off. All right, a little bit more. So I did set the bearing, and by the way, instead of actually, because this isn't something that I do, all the time. Instead of me buying a seal setting kit, basically it's a kit. I guess you can get it at Harbor Freight, but it just comes with different plates that will fit around different size seals. For my application, I made sure that this aluminum oil filter wrench would fit the diameter of this seal, and it fit beautifully. So I mean, you don't have to go and spend $40 and get one of those bearing or axle seal setters. Sorry, but this worked just fine. I got it seated in nicely, and she looks good. So the reason that I was getting the ABS light, or one way that I was kind of tracking it down, is there's actually a way that you can plug in the you can actually short a wire to the OBD2. In fact, let me just do that real quick. So I don't even know where my short wire is. So anyways, in my OBD2, so I actually have a Ultra Gauge 2 plugged in because I like to watch my transmission temperature while I'm towing. But essentially, on this OBD2, if you count on the top 1, 2, 3, 4 over, and then create a jumper wire to this last one, you can see just to the right of my finger, the rest of those are actual blanks. The first 4 from the right are blanks. So you want to come 1, 2, 3, 4 from the right. And if you short these two together, when you actually go to turn your ignition on, just to the start, your ABS light, instead of just being on, your ABS light will actually flash codes according to, and then you can find this also online, and maybe just for your sake, I'll save you some trouble and I'll kind of post these here. I can't claim that, I got these from another YouTuber that was kind enough to post them on their video, but basically, like, I was getting a code 34. So if you look at the code 34, left rear wheel speed sensor signal malfunction, and that was because of that glob of grease that was sitting there. Ultimately, because I think my bearing is starting to fail, even though I don't have wobble or grind or anything like that. I think it's on its way there. So anyways, there's just a little bit on that. And then just to clarify, what you would actually see is that ABS light right there would start blinking. It would go off for like 2 seconds, and then it would go blink, blink, blink for the number 3, and then a pause, and then it would go blink, 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 and that just coded out 34. And that's how it will do all the codes. The long pauses mean a break between numbers, and then the shorter blinks mean that it's still counting up, telling you what the digit is. So if it went blink, 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 that would be the number 5. And then there'd be a pause, and then blink, blink, blink would be the number 3. So that would be code 53, which I don't even know if that exists. I'm just, that's just an example. All right, the other thing with this project that I want to make sure and get out there is you do not actually have to drain your differential in order to do this project. When I pulled this axle out, absolutely nothing came out. And the reason for that is the way that I actually have the truck jacked up. So if you'll notice, I just put my jack stand under the side that I'm working on. And so the axle's on enough of a tilt where all of that oil is either at the middle of the differential, or if anything, it's to the driver's side wheel. So I serviced my differential about 8 months ago. I'm not near time to do it, and so I don't want to bother with it. So anyways, just wanted to get that out there as well. You do not have to drain your differential. Some other YouTubers out there, and I appreciate their contribution, but I disagree that that you have to drain your differential. It's a good opportunity. If you have not, if you haven't done your differential as of recent, then this is a great opportunity to do that. But if you've done it recently, like I have, you do not have to drain it. So there you go. All right, and so how I'm actually going to pull these bolts back up through and seat them in place is I'm going to just throw a stack of washers on there. I'm going to put my nut on, and then I'm just going to start screwing this down with my 14mm bolt, and then it'll actually suck this up through. See how it's kind of like sticking out? So it'll actually suck it up in there. So that's what I'm going to do for the next few minutes to all 4. All right, so I was just looking at a couple more videos on whether or not this bevel should go up or down. This is the thing, and I've had such a hard time finding videos on YouTube from mechanics who actually know what they're doing without having to, go to YouTube and get help like I am. But I'm going to put it back the way that it came off, and that means the bevel is going to point towards the differential with this outer ring. I just watched a video by Toyota Timmy, or Timmy Timster Toyota. Sorry, I'm sure that you've already come across his video if you've extensively researched this project like I have. And he makes the case that you should turn, if there's an outer retainer ring, which there's not on this one is already against the bearing. But if there's an outer retainer ring, so basically it would be in the vehicle that he was working on, I think it was a 4Runner. So he has the bearing, and there actually isn't this washer. He has a bearing, and then it's the first bearing retainer that goes on there, and then there's an ABS ring, and then there's a final retainer for the ABS ring, and that's the one that he actually flipped over, and the bevel was pointing towards the brake drum. So I have a different setup, and I haven't found a video or some reliable mechanic that tells me that on my 2005 Tacoma here that I should be flipping that bearing over. So that's how I'm going to push it back together. All right, and then as promised, here are the codes for the ABS. And remember, you're basically just going to be putting some copper wire from 13 and 4, right? So these are just kind of some direcciones to go do that. So when it actually starts blinking, you'll notice that this code, the C02003, and then it says a /31, /32, /33, /34. That's the last 2 digits is what they're actually going to be flashing. The ABS light is actually going to be flashing out. And then this *1 is simply explaining, and actually I'll explain *1 in here in just 1 second while I get the rest of this so that you can see all these codes. I could probably upload this as a document to open, but if I put it as a picture in the video, you won't be able to zoom in on it, and the text is too small. So The *1 at the end of the code is explained at the end of the paper here. So see, the *1 it says, even after the trouble code areas are repaired, the ABS warning light will not go off unless the following operations are performed. And then I went ahead and just added this little box here. So do your jumper to 4 and 13, just like in this diagram on the OBD2, and then turn the key on, and then quickly hit the brake pedal 8 times within 5 seconds. Turn your key off, and then you can start the truck again, and then your ABS light will be reset. And the only reason it would come back on at that point would be because you didn't fix the problem, or there's a new problem that's come up, and you'll have to go through that whole jumper process again to see if you're actually still pulling the same code that you think you just fixed. So anyways, as promised, there's the codes. All right, real quick. So the only thing I've taken off so far is this blue spring and cap, which goes right here. I undid this white spring, which connects right here at the bottom. Okay, purple spring is all the way down there at the bottom. I've got this yellow spring that's going to connect from there to there. I've got this bigger yellow spring that connects across the top. Okay, and then I've got, so I've got this little boot, this little fork right here that just straddles this shoe right here. If you can see it in there, but that's a fork. This shiny piece is a fork. So everything just kind of gets tucked away just like that. Hey, good morning.